Welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen and enjoy my stories every day. My name is Alex, and for 10 years, I thought I had it all figured out, a stable marriage, 2 wonderful kids, and a quiet but fulfilling life as a software engineer. Emily, my wife, was the more outgoing half of our partnership, a vibrant, ambitious woman who worked in client relations for a prestigious firm. She had a knack for making people feel special, which often translated to professional success. Together, we'd built what seemed to be a perfect suburban life, complete with PDA meetings, weekend barbecues, and movie nights with our kids, Jason and Ella. Life, as I knew it, unraveled on a sunny Tuesday morning in July. I was sitting at my desk, debugging a piece of stubborn code, when Emily called me with an unexpected proposal. "Alex," she began, her voice laced with excitement, "you won't believe this. My company's biggest client, William Crawford, invited us to his private island for the weekend. It's an exclusive retreat, just a handful of people, all expenses paid. You have to come with me." I frowned, shifting in my chair. A private island? Sounds extravagant. Why would he invite us? "Networking," she said, brushing off my skepticism. "He's hosting the whole team and their partners. Crawford believes in blending business with pleasure. It's supposed to strengthen client relationships. Plus, you'll finally get to meet some of the people I've been working with." Something about it felt off. I couldn't put my finger on it, but the idea of jetting off to a billionaire's private island for networking didn't sit right with me. Still, Emily's enthusiasm was hard to resist, and I wanted to support her career. Reluctantly, I agreed. The day of the trip arrived, and we boarded a private charter plane with Emily's colleagues. Crawford's presence dominated the group even before we met him. His name was spoken in hushed tones, with a mixture of awe and reverence. As the plane descended, the island came into view, a crescent of white sand cradled by turquoise waters, dotted with sprawling villas and lush greenery. It looked like paradise, but I couldn't shake the gnawing unease in my stomach. Crawford greeted us personally at the dock. He was every bit the charismatic mogul Emily had described, tall, silver-haired, and impeccably dressed. His smile was disarming, his handshake firm. He moved through the group like a seasoned politician, making each person feel seen and valued. When he reached Emily, his smile widened just a fraction. "Emily," he said warmly, "it's wonderful to see you again. And you must be Alex. Welcome." His charm was undeniable, but something about the way he lingered on Emily's name set my teeth on edge. Still, I played along, smiling politely as we were shown to our accommodations. The villa assigned to us was breathtaking, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean and a private infinity pool. Emily was giddy, snapping pictures and chatting about the planned activities, snorkeling, kayaking, cocktail hours. "Isn't this amazing?" she gushed, twirling in the middle of the room. "We could never afford something like this on our own." "It's something," I replied, my tone noncommittal. I didn't want to dampen her mood, but the opulence of it all felt excessive, almost surreal. That evening, we joined the group for a formal dinner on the veranda. The table was set with fine china and crystal glasses, and the scent of saltwater mingled with the aroma of grilled seafood. Crawford was the perfect host, effortlessly steering conversations and ensuring everyone felt at ease. He spoke about his journey to success, peppering his anecdotes with self-deprecating humor that made him seem approachable despite his immense wealth. Emily, seated across from me, was enthralled. She laughed at his jokes, hung on his every word. I tried to tell myself it was harmless, she was just being polite, engaging with a key client, but the way she leaned in when he spoke, the way her eyes sparkled, left a sour taste in my mouth. After dinner, as the group dispersed to mingle, Crawford approached me with a drink in hand. "Alex," he said, clinking his glass against mine, "Emily's mentioned you're a software engineer. Fascinating field. What kind of projects do you work on?" We exchanged pleasantries, but I couldn't shake the feeling that his interest was more performative than genuine. His attention flickered back to Emily, who was chatting with a few colleagues by the pool. "She's remarkable," Crawford said, almost to himself. "You're a lucky man." His words were a compliment, but the way he said them felt like a challenge. I nodded stiffly, unwilling to give him the satisfaction of a reaction. The next day was packed with activities. We went snorkeling in the crystal-clear waters and lounged by the pool, sipping cocktails brought to us by attentive staff. Crawford was everywhere, organizing games, telling stories, and effortlessly commanding the group's attention. Emily was drawn to him like a moth to a flame, always finding reasons to be near him. That evening, as we prepared for another lavish dinner, I decided to confront her. "Emily," I said, leaning against the bathroom door as she applied her makeup, "don't you think you're spending a lot of time with Crawford?" She glanced at me in the mirror, her expression unreadable. "He's our host, Alex. It would be rude not to." "I know, but," I hesitated, unsure how to articulate my unease without sounding paranoid. "Just, be careful, okay?" She sighed, setting down her mascara. "Alex, you're overthinking this. Crawford's just being a good host. Relax and enjoy the weekend." I wanted to believe her, but my instincts screamed otherwise. That night, during dinner, Crawford made another toast. "To connections," he said, raising his glass. "Old and new." His eyes lingered on Emily as he spoke, and for a split second, I thought I saw her blush. My grip tightened on my glass, but I forced myself to smile along with the others. Whatever was happening here, I needed to get to the bottom of it. By the third day on the island, my unease had morphed into a gnawing suspicion. Something was off, not just with Crawford, but with Emily. She was radiant in a way that had nothing to do with the tropical sun. Her laughter seemed brighter, her movements more fluid, and she lingered around Crawford far more than seemed necessary. Every time I tried to bring it up, she brushed me off, saying I was reading too much into things. "You're being ridiculous, Alex," she said that morning as she slipped into her swimsuit. "We're here to network and relax. Don't ruin it by being paranoid." "Paranoid?" I shot back. "Emily, he looks at you like he's already won something. And you're acting like a lovesick teenager around him." Her eyes narrowed. "This is important to my career. I need to be on his good side. Why can't you just trust me?" I bit my tongue, not wanting to spark another argument. But the seed of doubt had already taken root, and I was determined to find the truth. The turning point came that afternoon. Crawford had organized a group kayaking excursion to explore the island's hidden coves. Emily, of course, partnered with him, leaving me to paddle with one of her colleagues. Watching the two of them glide ahead, laughing and chatting, made my stomach churn. When we stopped at a secluded beach for lunch, I noticed Crawford and Emily slipping away under the pretense of scouting a trail. My partner for the day, a talkative woman named Lauren, nudged me as they disappeared into the trees. "They seem close," she said, her voice laced with curiosity. "Yeah," I muttered. "Too close." She hesitated, then added, "You're not the first husband to feel that way on one of these trips." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. "What do you mean?" Lauren glanced around, ensuring no one else could hear. "Crawford has a reputation. Let's just say he likes to connect with the wives of his employees. It's not exactly a secret." I stared at her, the pieces clicking into place. "And Emily?" She shrugged. "I don't know. But I'd keep an eye on them if I were you." The rest of the trip passed in a blur. I couldn't stop replaying Lauren's words in my mind, my anger and suspicion growing with every passing second. That night, I decided to take matters into my own hands. While Emily was in the shower, I accessed her phone. I hated myself for snooping, but I couldn't let this go unchecked. At first, everything seemed normal, texts from her friends, work emails. But then I found a hidden folder in her photo gallery. My heart pounded as I opened it, revealing selfies of her and Crawford. They weren't inappropriate, but the way they smiled at each other, the way she leaned into him, it was intimate in a way that no photo of hers and mine had been in years. And then there were the texts. Buried deep in her message history was a string of exchanges with Crawford that left no room for doubt. Crawford, can't wait for tomorrow. Just us, finally. Emily, I'm nervous, but excited. We need to be careful. I slammed her phone down, my hands trembling with rage. She had betrayed me, and she hadn't even tried to hide it. When she emerged from the bathroom, I confronted her immediately. What the hell is this? I demanded, shoving the phone in her face. Her eyes widened as she realized what I'd found. Alex, I can explain. Explain. I cut her off. Explain what? That you're sneaking around with our host. That you've made me the fool in front of your entire team. It's not what you think, she stammered, her voice trembling. Nothing has happened. I swear. I laughed bitterly. Nothing has happened. Emily, you're texting him about being careful. What exactly were you planning to be careful about? She looked away, unable to meet my gaze. I made a mistake. I got caught up in the moment, but I would never. Stop, I said, my voice cold. I don't want to hear your excuses. I want the truth. Emily collapsed onto the bed, burying her face in her hands. I don't know what to say. Her silence was all the confirmation I needed. The rest of the evening was a haze. Emily retreated to the bathroom, and I sat on the balcony, staring out at the ocean. My anger ebbed and flowed like the tide, giving way to waves of hurt and humiliation. How had I let this happen? How had I missed the signs? Around midnight, a knock at the door jolted me from my thoughts. It was Crawford, his ever-present smirk in place. Alex, he said smoothly, can we talk? I glared at him, barely containing my fury. You've got some nerve. I understand you're upset, he said, stepping inside uninvited. But I think you're overreacting. Emily and I. Don't, I interrupted. Don't you dare try to downplay this. He sighed, as if I were the one inconveniencing him. Look, I admire Emily. She's talented, driven, and yes, beautiful. But this is all just business. Business? I repeated, my voice dripping with sarcasm. That's what you call this? He smirked. You're smart, Alex. Surely you can see the bigger picture. Emily's career could benefit greatly from a close relationship with me. And you'd benefit too. I could make you very wealthy. I stared at him, disgusted. You think you can buy my silence? My approval? Call it an arrangement, he said, his tone casual. I'll transfer $200,000 to your account right now. All I ask is for the rest of the weekend with Emily. The audacity of his proposal left me speechless. But as my anger simmered, an idea began to take shape. If he thought I was just another husband willing to look the other way for the right price, he was sorely mistaken. You know what? I said, forcing a smile. Let me think about it. Crawford's smirk widened, and he patted me on the shoulder. Smart man. As he left the room, I closed the door behind him and locked it. My hands trembled, but this time it wasn't from anger. It was anticipation. I had all the confirmation I needed. Now, it was time to act. The morning light spilled through the glass walls of the villa, casting long shadows over the pristine, white marble floor. I sat at the breakfast table, sipping a cup of coffee I could barely taste, my mind racing. Emily had retreated into herself, barely speaking a word since last night. Her guilt hung in the air like a heavy fog, but I wasn't ready for another confrontation, not yet. The real battle wasn't with her. It was with Crawford, and I needed to make sure my next move counted. As Emily showered, I grabbed my laptop. The island's Wi-Fi was surprisingly robust, a necessity for business moguls like Crawford. I logged into the network and accessed a few tools I'd developed over the years, software designed to bypass basic security protocols. Crawford had handed me all the ammunition I needed when he revealed his hand the night before. If he was brazen enough to proposition me, there was no telling what kind of digital skeletons he had tucked away. My first task was simple: I hacked into the resort's internal system. It wasn't difficult. Crawford might have been meticulous about appearances, but his IT security was laughably inadequate. Within minutes, I was inside his email server. What I found confirmed every suspicion I had, and so much more. The inbox was a goldmine of incriminating evidence. Dozens of messages to women, wives of colleagues and employees, detailing arrangements like the one he proposed to me. Some included wire transfer receipts, others photos that left little to the imagination. This wasn't just a pattern, it was a methodical operation. Crawford used his wealth and power to seduce, manipulate, and exploit. But the most damning evidence wasn't the emails. It was a folder tucked away in his sent items, titled Memoranda. Inside were documents that revealed his true intentions. Crawford wasn't just pursuing Emily out of attraction, he was leveraging her position at work to secure deals and influence decisions in his favor. In short, he was using her to undermine the company's leadership. My hands shook as I copied everything onto a secure drive. This was bigger than I thought, bigger than me, bigger than Emily. I didn't just have the power to expose his manipulation of her, I had the power to destroy him completely. After Emily left the villa to join the others for brunch, I set the next phase of my plan in motion. I emailed everything I'd found to Crawford's board of directors and the legal department of Emily's company. I didn't hold back. The photos, the emails, the transactions, it was all there. My message was clear: if Crawford didn't back down, I'd go public. Once the emails were sent, I took a deep breath and sat back. The adrenaline coursing through me made it difficult to think straight. But this wasn't over. Crawford would receive those emails soon enough, and I needed to be ready for the fallout. By the time I joined the group at the pool, the atmosphere had shifted. Emily sat at a table with Crawford, her laughter forced and strained. When she saw me approach, her smile faltered. I gave her a curt nod before taking a seat at a nearby lounge chair. Crawford excused himself and walked over to me, his demeanor calm but his eyes steely. "Alex," he said, sitting down beside me. "We need to talk." I looked up at him, feigning ignorance. "What's on your mind?" His jaw tightened. "You know exactly what's on my mind. That little stunt you pulled this morning, was that supposed to scare me?" I leaned back, crossing my arms. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't play dumb," he hissed, leaning in. "You think you can threaten me? I've dealt with men like you before, small-time guys who think they've found a way to take me down. Let me give you a piece of advice: it doesn't end well for them." "Funny," I said, my voice steady. "Because I think this is going to end very well for me. And very badly for you." His smirk returned, but it was weaker now. "What do you want, Alex? Money? I can make all of this go away with a single transfer." I shook my head. "This isn't about money. It's about integrity, something you clearly lack. But don't worry. By the time your board is done with you, you'll have plenty of time to reflect on your shortcomings." Crawford stared at me, his facade finally cracking. "You've made a mistake," he said quietly. "One that you're going to regret." I stood, meeting his gaze. "We'll see." The rest of the day passed in a blur. I stayed close to Emily, not because I wanted to be near her but because I wanted to keep Crawford at bay. He was clearly rattled, pacing around the pool and barking orders into his phone. Whatever control he'd had over the weekend was slipping through his fingers, and it was a satisfying sight to behold. That evening, as the group gathered for a final dinner, Crawford's behavior became even more erratic. He was jumpy, his usual charm replaced with a barely concealed rage. Emily noticed it too, whispering to me, "What's wrong with him?" I didn't answer. Instead, I watched as Crawford excused himself from the table and disappeared into the villa. A few minutes later, Emily's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, her face paling. "I need to take this," she said, standing abruptly. "Sit down," I said firmly. She hesitated, glancing at the phone and then at me. "Alex. Whatever he has to say, he can say in front of everyone," I said, loud enough for the table to hear. The room fell silent as Crawford returned, his expression dark. He held up his phone, waving it like a weapon. "So this is your idea of a power play," he spat. "Dragging my name through the mud, ruining Emily's career." Emily's eyes darted between us, confusion and fear etched into her features. "What's he talking about?" I stood, facing Crawford. "I'm talking about the truth, Emily. About the texts, the emails, the pictures. About how he's been using you to further his own agenda." Her face crumpled. "Alex, Save it," I said, my voice cold. "We're done. Both of you." Before Crawford could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his face draining of color. I knew what it was. The board had responded to my emails, and the consequences were finally catching up with him. The rest of the dinner was chaos. Crawford stormed out, Emily followed, and I stayed behind, savoring the fallout. Whatever happened next, I'd already won. The following morning dawned unnervingly quiet. The breeze that once rustled the palm leaves and carried the sounds of the ocean now felt oppressive, heavy with tension. The weekend retreat was officially over, and everyone prepared to leave the island. Yet, the destruction left in Crawford's wake lingered, hanging over the group like storm clouds. I woke early, unable to shake the weight in my chest. The confrontation at dinner had left everyone shaken, but the look on Emily's face haunted me most of all. It wasn't just guilt, it was a deep, hollow anguish, as though she had lost something far more than I'd ever realized. She hadn't returned to our room that night. For all her betrayal, I still worried. Part of me even hoped she would walk through the door and beg for forgiveness, proving that some small part of her still wanted to fight for us. But as the minutes dragged on, it became clear she wasn't coming back. I packed in silence, barely noticing the luxurious surroundings I had once admired. My phone buzzed, a text from the private charter confirming our departure time. Crawford, predictably, hadn't shown his face again, and the whispers among the group suggested that he might not even make the flight. His empire was crumbling, but the victory I'd imagined felt hollow. Emily's absence made it clear that no matter how justified my actions, I had lost something too. At the dock, the group gathered, subdued and awkward. Emily was there, standing apart from the others, her sunglasses shielding her eyes. When I approached her, she flinched but didn't move away. "We need to talk," I said quietly. She nodded, her shoulders slumping. "Not here." We found a quiet corner of the dock, away from prying eyes. For a long moment, neither of us spoke, the sound of the waves filling the silence. Finally, she broke it. "I'm sorry, Alex," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "For everything." I stared at her, trying to find the right words. Anger, hurt, betrayal, they all churned inside me, but beneath it all was a sadness I couldn't ignore. "Why, Emily?" I asked. "Why him? Why do this to us?" Her lip quivered, and for the first time, I saw the cracks in her carefully composed facade. "I don't know," she admitted. "Maybe it was the attention, the excitement. I don't know. But it wasn't worth it. None of it was." "Then why didn't you stop?" I pressed. Why let it get this far? She took a shaky breath. Because I was afraid. Afraid of losing everything we built, of you finding out, of facing what I'd done. And now I have, and it's worse than I ever imagined. Her words cut deep. I wanted to believe her, to hold on to the love we'd shared, but the damage was irreparable. You already lost me the moment you chose him, I said. There's no coming back from that. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she didn't argue. I know. We stood in silence until the announcement came for boarding. She hesitated, looking at me one last time. I hope you find happiness, Alex, she said softly. Even if it's not with me. I didn't reply. She turned and walked toward the plane, and I watched her go, feeling a strange mix of relief and sorrow. The flight home was suffocating. Emily sat a few rows ahead of me, her head resting against the window. She didn't turn around once. The other passengers avoided eye contact, their whispers hushed but palpable. No one knew the full story, but they knew enough. When we landed, Emily and I went our separate ways. I didn't ask where she was going, and she didn't volunteer the information. I drove home in silence, the radio off, the weight of everything crashing down on me. The house, once a sanctuary, now felt foreign and empty. Jason and Ella were staying with my parents, sparing me the agony of pretending everything was fine. But the quiet only made it worse. I wandered through the house, finding reminders of Emily everywhere, her favorite mug on the counter, her scarf draped over the chair, the scent of her perfume lingering in the air. For a moment, I considered packing her things and leaving them on the porch. But something held me back. Maybe it was the final shred of love I still felt for her, or maybe it was just exhaustion. 2 days later, I received a call from Emily's sister, Sarah. Her voice was frantic, trembling. Alex, she said, have you heard from Emily? No, I replied, my heart sinking. Why? She's missing, Sarah said, her words tumbling out in a rush. She didn't come home after the trip. She won't answer her phone. I'm worried. I felt the air leave my lungs. Despite everything, the thought of her being in danger filled me with dread. Have you called the police? Yes, but they said it's too soon to file a report. I thought maybe she'd reached out to you. She hasn't, I said, gripping the edge of the counter to steady myself. But I'll let you know if I hear anything. The call ended, leaving me in a haze of panic and confusion. I tried to convince myself that she was fine, that she just needed time to process everything. But as the hours dragged on, my worry grew. The next morning, the police called. They had found Emily's car abandoned on a bridge an hour from our home. Her purse and phone were still inside, but there was no sign of her. My world crumbled. I spent the next week in a fog, alternating between denial and despair. Search parties combed the area, but no trace of her was found. The media caught wind of the story, turning our private tragedy into a public spectacle. Every time I saw her face on the news, smiling and carefree, it felt like a punch to the gut. Eventually, the search was called off, and Emily was presumed dead. The official cause remained uncertain, but everyone, including me, knew what had happened. The weight of her guilt, the fallout from Crawford's manipulation, and the collapse of our marriage had been too much for her to bear. In the end, Crawford faced his reckoning. The evidence I'd sent to his board led to his resignation, and he quickly faded from the public eye. But his downfall brought me no solace. The victory felt empty, overshadowed by the loss of the woman I had loved for so many years. I sit here now, alone in the home we built together, surrounded by ghosts of the life we once shared. I wanted justice. I wanted revenge. But in the end, I paid the ultimate price. Trust is fragile, and once it shatters, the pieces can never be put back together. And so, I'm left with nothing but memories, and the question I will never stop asking myself, was it worth it?